Hey, it's Chris, the Supply Chain Doctor. Over the years, I've interviewed some of the brightest minds and successful leaders in supply chain management. In May 2020, I sat down with supply chain leader Ken Ackerman to learn more about him and collect a little supply chain management history. After the interview, Ken told me about a similar interview he had with Dr. Jim Stock many years prior, and the related work Dr. Stock did. In November 2020, I was able to catch up with Dr. Stock to learn about him and his work. As an academic in the world of transportation, logistics, and what we now call supply chain management, Jim was well connected to many of the original academic thought leaders in the space. Jim did interviews with many of these thought leaders and shared them with me. The list includes Ken Ackerman, Don Bowersox, James Haskett, Bud LaLonde, John Langley Jr., Tom Menser, Tom Spee, and Daniel Wren. To carry on the great work started by Dr. Jim Stock, I'm dusting off these interviews and bringing them to you to help you get a better understanding of supply chain management and hopefully become a more effective supply chain professional.
It was kind of an intimate environment where you really got to know the professors and you did projects and so on. And I thought to myself, that sounds like a challenging way to kind of continue your learning, and I didn't know about the teaching, but I did know about the learning, and so I said, well, it's a low-risk option. I'm single, I got money in the bank. If I don't like it, I'll do something else. Well, as it turned out, I liked it, and I stayed with it, and it's kind of a circuitous routing to where I ended up, but it was all centered on that epiphany that I didn't really like what I was doing, and I had time and resources to explore some other things. And the people I met at OSU or at University of Detroit, I got to know them, understand what they were doing, understand the lifestyle, understand the opportunities, and I thought, this is what I'm going to explore. And so I enrolled at Michigan State University in the doctoral program, and they were just starting a doctoral program, and I guess in retrospect I'd say, don't go to a new doctoral program because they're never sure what a doctoral program is and they keep changing things. But it was a good experience at Michigan State. It just first time through it was difficult to figure out all the things that were changing at the same time you were. And I started the program in 1957 and graduated in 1961 with the PhD.
Now, where in that graduate education, either at University of Detroit or then at Michigan State, did you move from economics to general business to ultimately then was physical distribution and now logistics and supply chain management? How did that transition take place?
Well, fate works in strange ways. Sometimes, I guess. When I started my doctoral program at Michigan State University, I had to take a major field in economics that was required of all doctoral students. So I continued my interest in economics. I had a field in economics in my MBA degree. This was kind of a minor in your MBA degree in business economics. Then when I got to Michigan State, I had to take a full-blown series of courses in economics, and so there's a continuing thread through my education. I've taken more economics courses than I've taken any other courses, starting with my undergraduate degree. I arrived at at Michigan State. And again, as fate would have it, Don Bowersox and I were roommates. We had an office in the back of the old business building, and it was old at Michigan State. And Don is a lifelong friend and good competitor over the years. And we struggled through some of those courses, like welfare economics, together. So I had the continuing interest in economics all the way through my degree. At the same time all of this was happening, there was this new thing called physical distribution management, and there were a group of people at Michigan State that were, well, the first course outside of the AMA courses, the American Management Association courses, the first executive education course in physical distribution management was held at Michigan State University while I was there. And Frank Mossman and Ed Smikey and John Hazard and a number of people that were very early contributors to this field. The first book came out of physical distribution, came out of that group, and so I was very much influenced by that group, and even more so because I was heading off on a dissertation in leasing as a marketing tool, and I had most of the spade work done on that dissertation when General Electric came along and they had a fellowship in physical distribution. And so I switched horses and took their money and did a dissertation in store location, which was kind of remotely connected to this. I moved out to University of Colorado for 4 years, and I taught some physical distribution there, and I did executive programs and so on. And then I came back in 1964 back to Ohio State, and Don was there, of course, and a number of people were still there that I had met, Stan Hollander and John Hazard, and I took over, as you said in your introduction, I took over the food marketing program about a year after I got there, because at that time the big problem in food marketing, or one of the big problems in food marketing, was distributing products. You know, it's easy to distribute chips or diamonds or something like that. You can air freight them and they're in a box this big, but when you start distributing food products that are, you know, worth $1 a pound or something, and they're grown in the Imperial Valley and shipped to New York City and so on, it's a much more complex kind of thing, and that's what led me into this food marketing program for 4 years while I was at Michigan State University.
Okay. Now, talking about that academic career, how did you go about getting that first position at Colorado?
I went to the American Marketing Association meetings. They had separate academic meetings and practitioner meetings, and the academic meetings were meat markets for people looking for jobs. And so what you did is you looked at all the postings and you arranged your interviews, and I was impressed with Colorado, and I paid them a visit. They made me an offer, and I accepted that, and I stayed there for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And it was a good choice for me, not so much for my wife. She was pregnant part of the time. Most of the time we were there, and that's a difficult place because of the altitude for pregnancies. Very often what happens is the babies are born early because of the the altitude. And our middle daughter was born prematurely, and so it was a lot tougher on her than it was on me. So
now, what precipitated your move away from Colorado after 4 years?
Well, all our family were in Detroit. My side of the family and my wife's side of the family were in Detroit. We were married in 1968, or I was married. Barb and I were married in 1968, and all of our family, and that was a long haul. It was about 1,200 miles to get back to see family, and I started at Colorado with one child at $7,500 a year, which was kind of a princely sum. But there wasn't enough discretionary income to be flying back and forth to Detroit to see the family, and that's always a strong pull. And the other strong pull was being asked back to Michigan State University, where I got my degree, which was an exception, because most people don't teach at the place where they get their degree. And I thought that was an exception, and it was a good thing, and I liked the people, and again, the attraction of getting more directly into physical distribution at that time was important in that decision as well.
Okay. And then after your time at Michigan State, the Ohio State opportunity came along.
Right.
Tell us how that came about.
Well, again, fate works in strange ways. When I was a doctoral student at Michigan State, there was a fellow doctoral student by the name of Jim Robeson, and Jim Robeson got called up in the Berlin airlift. He was in the military police, and so he had to quit the doctoral program in the middle, and he decided that he wanted to come back to Michigan State, but he couldn't quite get the deal he wanted. So he decided to go to another university, and he ended up teaching at Ohio State. And they had a chaired professorship come up, and he and John Grabner at that time kind of promoted me as a candidate for that, and it seemed an opportunity to go to the next level. That is, to build a strong distribution, what was beginning to call logistics at that time, program, kind of on my own, and out of the shadow of some of the people at Michigan State. So it was, like Don used to say, he used to say when he introduced me at a meeting that I needed some time in a farm school, so they sent me out for conditioning to Ohio State. But it did give me a chance to kind of run my own show, I suppose, and that was important at that time in my career.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've summarized a lot of your career in the introduction, at least briefly. What do you think, as you look back, is your most significant accomplishment as an academic?
You mean the whole career?
The whole career.
60 doctoral students. I think of all of the things I've done, that's been the most important thing I've done, because this is a rare business, this academic business. You can clone yourself, long before the biologists can figure out how to do that. And we have people all over the world that hopefully I've influenced in a positive way and have started their own programs. So it's kind of like cloning yourself and being able to impact future generations in the discipline. And that's kind of a rare thing that academics have a corner on. Mm-hmm. And so of all the things I've done, I would rank that number one.
Okay. Now, as people view Bud LaLonde one day, Other than your doctoral students, what would you think they would say Bud's legacy would be?
Well, I think that we've done a lot of innovation in the discipline here at Ohio State. We started a journal when there was no journal, there was no funding. We did it when people told us we were crazy. We needed $50,000 to start a journal, and we had about $7,000 from a fund that Transportation Association of America turned over, and being, I guess, optimistic and viewing the world through rose-colored glasses, we started a journal, and that was back before the days of electronic digital ages, and you had to type every page and proofread it, and I should say Cindy and I, Cindy Kuykendall and I started the journal. I got most of the credit, she did most of the work, so but that's certainly, given where the journal has been, has gone from my first 10 years as editor of the journal, as a #1 journal in the field, that I certainly look on as a legacy. We started the Educators Conference, and what we were doing is we were trying to find a way to get the academics and the practitioners close together, and so we decided that we would have an academic meeting on the day before at that time NCPDM started. It was like 35 years ago or 40 years ago. When we turned that over to a rotating chair of that problem, or of that program rather, we had 300 people at that meeting from 30 different countries, and we globalized ahead of the wave in a sense. We started the doctoral consortium, which brought together doctoral students from all over the country. We've done a career pattern study. In fact, we were just working a couple of days ago on the 35th edition of the career pattern study, which was trying to outline what's happening in the field and what the directions the field are going in, and forecast it for the benefit of the practitioner. And probably, we've written a lot, and we have doctoral dissertations that got published, and so on. So there's a pile of stuff that I hope will be a legacy in many different ways.
Okay. Now, in doing all of that, what do you think was the most important single personality trait that you have that allowed you to do that?
Probably entrepreneurship. I think that you have to be strategic in contributing or deciding how to contribute to field. I mean, you can't sit back and wait for stuff to float in over the transom. I mean, you can, but you have to decide how to deploy your assets. When I got here, we had 4 people in the logistics area, and there was no prospect then of getting any more. Everybody had to teach marketing as well as logistics. So we were resource bound. We didn't have a large number of people. So what we had to do is we had to engage in high leverage kinds of activities. That's why we started a journal. And we felt that we needed a journal for people to publish in if this discipline was going to go anywhere. and at that time there were transportation journals, but there were no logistics journals, and so we took a risk and caused that to happen. We started the annual educators conference, and that's in its 35th or 36th iteration this year, and we have started these activities and spun them off so that other schools could have an opportunity at managing it. But we were the initiators or the entrepreneurs in that particular area. We had only 4 people, so we couldn't get heavily into executive education. It just takes too much time. You know, that you have to think about the size of the lever you need to change things in the discipline, and educating people 30 people at a time just didn't do it. You know, it took too long. We didn't have the resources. We didn't have the structure we have today in terms of physical facilities and so on. So we said, we're not going to spend a lot of time doing that, but we're going to spend our time doing the educators conference, doing the proceedings in the educators conference, to do the journal, to do the doctoral consortium, thinking about who your constituencies are, and then strategically plan how you impact each constituency. And if you do that, you can make an impact with 4 people, as we proved. And there were schools far bigger than ours that weren't as highly regarded as we were. I mean, it was kind of a smoke and mirrors kind of exercise. But I think that if there's one talent, it's that strategic management, entrepreneurship that allowed us to do what we did.
Now, with that personality trait of entrepreneurship and doing all the things do you have any regrets of things that you didn't do?
Oh, well, there's always regrets, because you're a limited. You have limited capacity, and you have to make a stream of decisions, and so with limited capacity, so sometimes you're going to be wrong, and sometimes you're going to misallocate resources, because you don't. With 4 people all teaching and marketing as well, you don't have a lot of slack to take big chances, and so yes, I mean, looking back, we would have, or at least I would have done things differently than some things differently than I did. One thing I wouldn't do differently is our alliance with CLM or NCPDM or now CSCMP was a very important part of what we were able to accomplish. And they had the vision and foresight to work with us in making it happen. And if they didn't, a lot of those things we talked about a moment ago would never have happened. We can't. That's part of the leverage, figuring out what kind of alliances you ought to have,
right?
And how 2 + 2 = 5, and that kind of thing. And you have to do that when you're resource constrained. And you should do it even when you're not resource constrained. But I think that there are some things that I would have done differently. I probably would have lobbied for more people here. I probably would have been more aggressive about having a logistics course in the MBA curriculum, which we don't. We have operation courses, but we don't have. We have electives, but we don't have a required course in the MBA program. I probably would have spent more time developing a business advisory committee, and we talked about that and wrestled with that, but it takes a lot of time to do that right. And again, we were resource constrained, but maybe we misallocated resources. Maybe we should have done that.
Did you have, in your early days as an academic, any mentor that you looked towards as a model, perhaps, or as an influencer?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to have a number, I think, of mentors. Early on, Ed Smikey and Frank Mossman at Michigan State. Later on, in my first job at University of Colorado, Bill Stanton, who was chairman of the department and a kind of like a godfather to me while I was there for 4 years, and we have kept in touch. I think that even earlier, as I said, in high school, probably Father French and Father Sheedy were names I remember that were people who influenced the course with which my life flowed through, I guess. That's probably what I recall as we sit here today.
Okay. To what extent do you think you may have conducted your professional life by some personal code of conduct or belief system or emphasis?
Oh, absolutely. I think that you start saying when you choose to become a professor, then you choose a challenge that says I should produce knowledge and I should disseminate knowledge, and that's the role of a professor. I think both parts are important: producing knowledge and disseminating knowledge, and that's producing new knowledge. And it can be research, it can be concepts, it can be textbooks, there are all kinds of ways of producing knowledge. But you buy into that scheme when you become a professor, that those are your two jobs. And I think that one of the great privileges of being a professor, I think, is that you're able to do, it's like being a small business person in a bigger group. You know, you can kind of do what you want to do. You don't have to be there 8 to 5, but as you know, and true for yourself, I worked probably 60 or 70 hours a week when I was able to do that. I can't quite take those 18-hour trips to New York anymore, but you work very hard at what you do, producing and disseminating knowledge. You have the freedom to shape the kind of knowledge you want to work on, and how you want to disseminate it. And that's a challenge and a curse. It's a challenge in the sense that you have to decide for yourself what your stream of research is going to be, and if you have a second stream of research, and how you're going to attack it, if you're going to be an empiricist, if you're going to be a modeler, and so on, what are the tools you're going to use to most effectively develop the knowledge, and how do you develop yourself in making that happen, and then what are the channels, who are the people you ally with, and so on. You have all those choices. That's a challenge. It's also a curse. You can make bad choices, and academics frequently do. And so I think what you do is to say, I know what my job is, and I have the integrity to pull that off. That is the job that I view myself in. I don't take advantage of the freedom. I use it to shape what I do and to shape the others I work with. I I hope that one of the things one of the legacies I would leave would be the sense of integrity that I have not. I think I can say honestly, I have not done anything simply for money since I've been a professor. I do consulting, and I believe in consulting. I think it's a good idea to get close to your laboratory, and I do give speeches at conventions and executive education and so on. And I think that's good. It plants the flag of the university, and it's good publicity, and people come and hire our students, and there are all kinds of benefits to getting that kind of exposure. But therein lies the curse. You can also abuse those kinds of privileges. And I hope a legacy I leave would be that this is a business of integrity. It's not a business of opportunism.
The Supply Chain Doctor interviews thought leaders and visionaries who have had an impact on the field of supply chain management, shares professional development concepts for practitioners, and investigates current and future trends in the industry. Interested in sponsoring this show to help you get your message out? Send a note to chris@thescdr.com. We can also help with world-class supply chain education and workshops for you and your team. Thanks for listening.